Thank you, Danny and Liz. Terry's dad is on his way to Birmingham, to UAB, I assume. And they suspect some kind of heart problem. They were attempting to take him by ambulance to Decatur General, to Decatur Morgan, they call it now. And then they wanted to send him to Huntsville for a heart catheterization process, and they didn't have any room for him there, so they're sending him to Birmingham. They're on their way there. I don't know who all is going, but Terry and her mother are part of that. Pray for them. They're kind of in touch, but they're just now probably getting on the road. Let's look at Romans chapter 1. Andy, y'all folks are crazy for coming out on a night like tonight. You heard about that joke about this Sir Galahad. It's during the medieval times. He was out searching for the silver chalice, no doubt. And he had traveled on his weary old horse for so long it collapsed underneath him and he had to walk to an end. And so he got to the end. He really didn't have, it was just storming. It was just dark, stormy, worse than it is out there tonight, just rain, thunder, and lightning. And the knight knocked on the door, and the innkeeper came to the door, and he really said, I need a horse. I've got to get on. I've got to carry on my quest. And he said, well, I don't have a horse. He says, all I've got is this old, he said, I got an old St. Bernard. He said, send him out with a cask of rejuvenation around his neck every once in a while, but I don't know if he could ride him. He said, besides, I wouldn't send a knight out on a dog like this.
Oh, me.
Wouldn't send a knight out on a dog like this. Paul probably wrote, there's some who believe he wrote this when he was in jail at Ephesus, and some believe that he had actually, remember when he set foot in Jerusalem, they arrested him and threw him in jail, but there was really plots for his life. They were trying to kill him, and so the powers that be there said, we got to get him out of town. We're going to have some trouble here. So they whisked him away in the night and took him to Caesarea Maritima. And that's over on the coast, the Mediterranean Sea, and that's where, kind of like where Caesar's getaway place was, a very luxurious place. I've shown you some slides of that. To visit there, the ruins are still there, the aqueduct is still there. And there's probably a hole in the ground there where they put Paul while he was there. And they may have said, here, he said, could I have a pen and paper while I was down here in this hole? Okay. May have written Romans from there. Of course, it was more than just a hole. It was a cistern system. And so once you got down into the hole, there was a cavern under there, dungeon kind of a thing. Kind of an eloquent letter to be writing from jail, but you know, some of the Hitler wrote Mein Kampf while he was in jail. Was it Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote letters from Birmingham? He wrote letters from Birmingham while in jail. John Bunyan wrote Pilgrim's Progress. So, sometimes when I'm in Scottsboro and I'm there and I'm just wishing I could be here at home or somewhere where I could do something, God says, why don't you write something? This is better than being in jail. So sometimes I do and sometimes I just ignore it. In verse 8 here, we've been looking at some of these verses. He says, first I thank God through Jesus Christ for you all. Some people accuse Paul of being a southerner. He uses you all a lot. Y'all. I've been thanking God through Jesus for y'all. That your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. That's really a great testament to their faith. They had great faith, and they were believers in Jesus. But there was more to it than just that, and that they had great faith and they were tremendous Christians, but they were wrong. And that's one of the scariest places to be a Christian, is in the capital of the empire, the seat of the empire. That's where the emperor's at. And but it also testifies to the speed with which the gospel spread. It's already at Rome. People went there and carried their faith with them. I'm bitter both to the Greeks, and it's really not just the Greek people, the people from Greece. Greeks is kind of what they called everybody that wasn't a Jew. But then there were people who were worse than Greeks. They were barbarians. We kind of use that word as a derogatory term these days. Barbarians. It's kind of like being a deplorable. You've probably heard of those. Those are terrible people.
I moved verse 8 up to the top.
All right. Thank you, sir. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayers, making a request that by any means now at length I might have a prosperous journey by the will of God to come to you. Yeah, they arrested me and they're bringing me there, so I'm headed your way, and it's God's will. For I long to see you that I may impart unto you some spiritual gift to the end that you may be established. The word established, we talk about an establishment, is a property, a building. And we see the word of building someone up or edifying. We also talk about a building being an edifice. The Bible talks about edifying one another, and it means helping one another in ways that makes you stronger. Doing something that gives you a push or a leg up. Helping one another. He said, I want to do that. I want to do that. Verse 12 says, that is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me. So you've got great faith, and he says, I believe in Jesus. And he says, you know, what happens is when people that have faith get together, that fellowship. Have you ever had fellowship with people that you never met before? Have you met people to find out they're a Christian? And that seems to, it makes such a big difference. I've been all around the world, and to find people that are Christians just makes me feel like I'm at home. I can sit down and talk and meet with anybody of any flavor of Christianity if they say, well, I'm a Christian too. I've said, well, wonderful. Met them on planes and on buses, on boats, in the desert, in huts, on rivers and seas. Now, I would not have you, I don't want you to be ignorant. I don't want you to be lacking in your knowledge, brother, that oftentimes I purposed to come to you, but was led hitherto. It's about something, things got in the way, mostly me. That I might have some fruit among you also, even as also among other Gentiles. Paul was a competitor, and he was someone who thought logistically. I want to be able to do some work there. And I want to be able to do some work there. I want to it's kind of like Johnny Appleseed. Has anybody ever determined if Johnny Appleseed was a real historical character, went around planting apple trees all over the
Well, that was his nickname. His name was John Chapman.
John Chapman. So it was a real guy. He's planting out.
He was a real guy.
All right. And Johnny Appleseed was probably the kind of person, and I remember them telling us that story when I was in grammar school. They said, you know, everywhere he went, he planted trees. And he said, there's apple trees all over the United States now. So Paul said, I want to be able to plant something or produce something there. There's a great deal to be said for taking care of the people who are around you. What about the person who lives across the street? What about the person next door to you? Well, all of that. But do that, of course. Don't neglect that. But if you get a chance, after having spoken with your neighbor, go down the road a little piece or go to the next county, to the next state. If you have an opportunity, not just so that you can say that you went or that you've been there, but Paul says there's a whole world out there of people who don't know Jesus. Regardless, and in spite of the great success of the Great Commission and Christian work today, there are still many, 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 many people in the world today who've never heard the name of Jesus. Never heard of it. It's an amazing thing. We're so immersed in Christianity here today, it's difficult for us to imagine meeting someone who's never even heard of Jesus. But there are many of them. There are many, many people in the world. There are 7.5 billion people in the world, and probably only about 4 billion of them actually have heard the name of Jesus. I'm a debtor to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and the unwise. Take that up to the top there, and let's look at 15, Andy. So much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. That I'm ready to go to Rome. One of the greatest verses in Scripture right here in verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes. Believing the gospel is what saves a person. And wherever Paul went, he always went to the Jew first. And we've talked a little bit about how God's salvation. And I've often, I guess, misrepresented other people's faith. I heard someone misrepresenting mine earlier this week on a Bible teaching program on television and calling, you see, I do not believe in two peoples of God. I don't believe that there is Israel and the church. I believe, and one reason that I'm working my way through Romans here is because here in Romans, Paul describes that God hasn't finished with the Jews. He hasn't cast the Jews away. He hasn't pulled back all of his promises from the Jews. He says the Jewish people, or the nation of Israel, is like a tree. And he says the Gentiles are like a limb or like another branch that has been grafted on. And so I've seen grafting done, and I've seen trees and fruit trees especially that had two different kinds of fruit growing on them. But you don't refer to that as two half trees. It's just one tree. Because when it grafts on, you finally get to the place, what they do is they create a wound in the host tree and then cut off a branch of another tree and put it on there, and they'll just kind of wire it to it or tape it to it or band it so that those two wounds are together and they'll grow together. And then eventually they'll remove all of the bandages, or they'll remove all of the strapping and all of the ties that kind of kept it stable. And it's one tree. And that's what we are now. We are the church. We are Israel. You see, the very first believers in Jesus were the church. And they were all Jewish people. And then they began to bring people like me and you, Gentiles, into the church. But they didn't have to be circumcised to become Jews. They were, however, part of the church. And heirs to all the promises that God ever made to Israel. But it had always been Jesus' way. And he doesn't say here, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for there's the power of God unto salvation to all who believe it, to the Jew first and then to the Greeks. He doesn't say that. To the Jew first and next to the Greeks. He says to the Jew first, look there in verse 16, to the Jew first and also to the Greeks. That's a very, very, very grammatically strange way of saying that. It's not first and then second. It's first and also. You see, also is something that comes along beside of it. It's not here, first and next, or first and then. It's first and also. And we see this happening in the ministry of Jesus. Jesus kept telling his disciples, don't go to anybody but the children of Israel. But there was always that Syrophoenician woman who came up, or that person who asked for crumbs from the table, and someone who said, Lord, have mercy on us. And he says, I'm just here for Israel. And they said, well, and Jesus would help them. Or this centurion, that Roman centurion came, and Jesus healed his servant. And so it was always Jew first and also to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. And that's really what I want to tell you about tonight and talk about. I want to create a mental image in your mind that I have had for a long time, and it really helped me. I think a message by Dr. Adrian Rogers helped me with this many years ago. He says, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. And Dr. Rogers, in his message, it was a message about those who've never heard. Someone had asked him a question. What about those who've never heard? And so he said he did not have all the answers, but he said, that God shines the light on someone, And here in Romans chapter 1, Paul's going to talk about, you can see God in creation. You can see God in the sunrise and sunset and all that God made. And so Dr. Rogers said that's like light. That's truth and light. You can look at the world and say, hey, there's always going to be some fool that says, well, this just kind of popped up out of nothing. This kind of sprang out of nowhere. Dr. Adrian Rogers said the evolutionist believes that nothing plus no one equals everything. Nothing plus no one equals everything. It just, woof, and here it is. But he says, if you'll say, man, somebody made this. Somebody made this. If you have light, if you respond to the light, he'll give you more light. And every time the light shines on you, you respond positively. That's what Dr. Rogers was saying. And he says it's like going from faith to faith to faith to faith to faith. And any person, he says, everybody has that opportunity, that chance. There's still a great many unanswered questions, but people all around the world are trying to respond to the light. You know, that missionaries have hacked and whacked their ways out into the jungles and gone out and places that no other person had ever been, and they found people. And when they got there and they learned to communicate with those people, they said, we've been waiting for you to come and tell us about God. We've been waiting for you. Somebody told us you were going to come here and tell us. That's strange. The world that we live in, your world, mine, we're Christians and we're believers. Paul is stressing that. You have faith. Everybody in the world is talking about your faith. And I want to come and rub my faith up against your faith so that, you know, and then he says what happens is, and what he's implying there is that you have faith and I have, and when we get together, we got twice as much faith. And that's one of the things that church is about, is that as we edify one another, build each other up, you ought to be able, when you come here, one of the purposes is for me to draw something from you, for you to draw something from me, for us to pass something along.
Right.
What do you need? What's in your pocket? What can I give you? What can I share? What do you need? For the journey? What can I give you that I have? What kind of fire do you need? What kind of spark do we need? Faith to faith. Faith to faith to faith. And it's not but like, it's really not just like putting one foot in front of the other. And it's not like that. You've discovered that, whether you've been able to describe that in your mind. Let's close that out, Andy. Let's close up with these pictures. Because I want to put these images in your mind, and they're kind of like illustrations. But when Paul says the just shall live by faith, you know, you're going to succeed, you're going to prevail, you're going to get farther down the road, you're going to make it, and what gets you from here to there is faith. It's always going to be faith. He says the just shall live by faith. And what it means is, you know, when you say, that's what I live on, that's what gives me life, you're talking about it like it was water, or like it was food, or like it was nourishment, or it was like love, or kindness, or comfort, or shelter. That is what we subsist on. That's what we survive on. That's what charges us. It's what nourishes us and feeds us and compels us. It's like a polar bear, and he's walking on an ice floe. You see what he's doing? From faith to faith.
He's checking out the ice.
That's right. He said, because it's not just putting one foot in front of the other, because there are lots of false moves. There's a lot of bad steps. There's a lot of things to step on. And there's a lot of things when you put your foot out there and you're just doing that. I saw a little video clip on Instagram the other day. It said, this is me working out. And it showed an old hound dog, and he was standing at the end of a treadmill, and he was going like this. The treadmill was just running. He had one paw on it. He said, I'm working out. I'm talking like that. And so our journey is not just, like Forrest Gump. It's a lot kind of like this. Oh, by the way, the polar bears are just fine. You've been worried about it? I think Time Magazine showed a picture of some skinny, all yellowed up, sickly looking polar bear and said, climate change, man. It's killing all the polar bears. Well, we found out that polar bear was dying of some disease. It was a diseased polar bear. And they said, well, the polar ice caps are just melting like crazy. Do you know that all over most of the United States, right this very minute, we're experiencing some of the coldest winters in recorded history? That's global. But you think you can't win with this global warming, people, because if it's cold, it's global warming. If it's hot, global warming. And if it's raining, if it's a tornado, if it's a hurricane, that like we never have had any of them before. And every time a hurricane starts heading toward the coast, you know what they're going to say from here on into the end of time? It's the worst one the world has ever heard of. It's going to kill everybody. This one's going to kill everybody. Man, that's one of the battles I'm trying to fight on Facebook. I'm trying to tell everybody the world is not coming to an end until God says it. And the sky is not falling. The world is not collapsing and falling apart. God is in complete control. Don't lose your grits. The polar bears are fine. If you have access to Facebook, I've got some articles on there where you can go, and they're like people who have government grants. Do you know what they get paid millions of dollars to do every year? They count polar bears. I want that job. I do. I'd like to do it. If they came and said, I'd say, Lord, thank you for calling me to preach, but I feel like I've been called to count polar bears. It pays better. No, I couldn't do that. He wouldn't let me do that. But it sounds fun. It sounds fun. And they said, the polar bears are fine. They're fat. Their coats are white. And they're just like this one. They're looking around. And if you get close enough to them, they'll eat you. Do you think they live off Coca-Cola? Oh, that's just what they use for snacks.
Well, you can't believe everything you see on TV.
That's right. The people think, well, it's on TV. It's got to be true. The polar bears are just fine. As a matter of fact, that's the name of the article. And I got 2 or 3 articles just from people who say, well, that's just a nutty person. And no. People that know say the polar bears are fine. They're not dying. The polar ice caps are not melting. And the ozone building back up. Oh, man. Well, let's look to the next slide there, number 2. There's a guy. He's almost right. And this helps me because I've been walking with the Lord for a long time. But I know that it's something you need to move forward. You need to get to where He wants you to go. But it's not like just walking down the road. You know what I'm talking about? Can you see what I'm saying here? And that's what Paul is saying in Romans. It's like moving. It's not just one foot in front of the other or just one step and then the next step. It's from faith to, wait a minute, that's not faith. From faith to faith. It's not just a straight line. It's not the shortest distance between 2 points. He says I can believe in this, I can stand on that. I can believe in that, I can take a stand on that. That can hold me up. But that right there is a little shaky. I'm not going to base my life on that. I'm not going to go in that direction. So here's a picture of a guy, and this has helped me because I have a lot of opportunities. There are voices in my head, and that I hear and see things that speak to my heart. And there are people who are shouting at me from the television or from books or magazines and from the radio, and it says, here, try this, do that. This will be good for you. And you can't listen to all those people. You gotta move forward. You got to go where God wants you to go, but you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And you got to go from faith to faith to faith. All right, let's go on to the next one. I like this. Well, I love that. I don't know where that's at. That's one of the advantages of the internet. You can kind of look at something like that. I've been to places like that. Stepping stones in a stream. Now, that's beautiful and that's pretty. And there's no doubt, no question, those stones are for stepping on. But it's not like the same as a bridge, is it? What could you say? If you were there with your grandchild and y'all came up to this place, what would you tell your grandson? Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. That's why. It's slippery.
And you could fall in.
That's right. And falling in wouldn't be the worst part. It'd be hitting those other stones or something. You'd fall in the water and you'd hit. Be careful. This is dangerous. So, but this is what this is here for. This has been put here so that you can get to the other side, so you can get on down the road. And life is like that. You just can't put your head up in the sky and just go for a stroll. You'll run into stuff in your life, in your daily walk, in the way you do things and how you live your life. You can't just stumble forward. You can't just plow straight ahead. You've got to be wiser than that. And that's what Paul said. You've got to go from faith to faith. He says, there's a sound, solid, strong place to put your foot. But he says, you've got to find it. You've got to judge. You've got to make a decision. You've got to let the Lord lead you. Okay, let's go on, Annie. There's Granny. She's trying to help him, man. Dad's no help. He's back in the back. What would he do? But here's some stones, and they're going to cross. They're going to get to the other side. But they know and this doesn't look all that slippery. It looks like the sun has dried us. And you might say, well, it's still going to be dangerous. Be careful. We don't want to wind up going downstream. But this also shows something else too, that we're going together. And I can actually look back over my shoulder and say, put your foot right there. Someone says, I don't know what to do next. And you say, well, just step where I step. Put your feet where I put my feet. And that's what we're talking about in the church, leadership. Some people are followers, some are leaders. But nearly everybody's a follower to some extent. There's someone who's looking at you, someone who's watching you. And you have to tell them, listen, you can't just put your head down and barrel ahead. I was watching football yesterday. And I love to watch those running backs. I always wanted to be a running back, and I told coaches that, and they never thought I had enough sense to do that, or ability maybe. But see, when they have numbers of plays and codes, sometimes they run it in from the sideline, and sometimes they have a signal or a card that they put up. They want to tell the quarterback what play to run next. And so I'm really not even sure how they run these offenses without huddles, but that's very, very popular these days, where they just keep going up to the line of scrimmage. Evidently, they can all see the signs from the sideline, and they don't have to call a huddle. But when I was playing football, the quarterback we'd line up in 2 rows, and he would stand in front of us, and his back was to the other team, and he'd say, "Sweep 32 on 2." That means when he says hut, hut 2 times, that we was going to do sweep 32. And 32 was the number of the slot, and it would also tell which person was going to get the ball. So everything, just in those few words, you know where it's going, calling the plays. But I like to watch football because you can see, Terry will ask me, she didn't play football. And she says, when they handed him the ball, why did he run up in there where all them folks are? Ain't nobody over there. Why did he run over there? I said his coach told him that when you get the ball, you run right there. And a lot of times, if he decides he's not going to do that, he'll wind up he don't get to play. And I said he was told to run there no matter what. But you will find, and I see too, and I don't know everything that goes on in the field, but I can see sometimes a really, really talented running back, and he lines up, and they're going to sweep 32, and he knows the ball's coming to him, and he's supposed to run right over through that tackle right there. He's supposed to push his man out that way, and supposed to leave me in space right there. They hand me the ball, and I've already took 2 steps, and I found out that tackle got beat. There ain't no hole there. There's just a bunch of folks. And I saw it several times yesterday. Alabama has some wonderful running backs where they say, whoop, ain't no hole there. And they'll turn, take a right turn or a left turn. We got one fellow there, he'll just stop completely. And everybody go, and just run all into each other in front of him. He'll just go, and I can't, how can anybody be just running like full blast open and just go, like it, just stop. And everybody else go, they're in front of him, and then he will and go around him. This makes him look silly. They're all piled up on top of each other, and he's running for a touchdown. So we can look into the Word of God, and we can say, well, I've been places like this before, and I've seen it. But all of a sudden, we've got to be able to read what's in front of us, where the stones are. and be able to run your life when things are not running in a straight line. Well, I think I need to do a dog leg right here. I think I need to stop for a minute. My stones have run out, or that doesn't look like faith right there. I don't want to step on that. You know what I think that is? I think that's a turtle. I think I'll step on that. He's going to take off. All right, go on, Andy. Listen. I saw that when I was putting these together. I have no idea what that is. It doesn't look like anything I'd want to step on, unless something was on fire after me. Kind of looks like mushrooms. Someone drew or painted that, or may even put that in their artsy pond out back. It's pretty. It don't look very steppable. All right, let's go on. This is a clip from one of the world's greatest movies ever made. I don't know, Cecil B. DeMille. This is one of the greatest movies. Anybody recognize that clip right there from what movie that's from? Come on, Andy. Huh? Yeah, it is Tremors. It's from Tremors. Kevin Bacon movie. And it's about these people live out in this desert town, this deserted town as well. And some prehistoric monster is like this big, gigantic worm that crawls underneath the sand, underneath the earth. It can move like a fish through water. And it'll come up from underneath the ground and eat you. And so these are the stars of the show. And they got stuck. This thing chased them out there, and they got up on a rock and couldn't get away. Let's look at the next slide there. There's the two stars. And they had to have the female lead in the movie tell them how we're going to get to the truck. And so she figured out, they found some poles there that just happened to be there. Very lucky for them. Okay, look at the next one, Andy. And they figured that they could pole vault from one of those rocks to the other rock. They could they could make it to the truck. I think I may have one more. Do I have one more, or is that the last one? That's the last one. So, but they were able to pole vault from one stone to the other, and then they pole vaulted from the last rock into the bed of the truck and took off, and that thing was after them every step of the way. Sometimes, going from faith to faith, you're going to need a pole. You're going to have to pole vault. It's not always easy. Paul kind of says it like it just comes natural, like the just shall live by faith. And we walk, we step, we move, we live from faith to faith. It's like walking on a chain. It's putting your feet where you know that you're going to always be on solid ground that you can call, this is something I can believe in. And that's why we need to believe in things. We need to have things to believe in. We need to have doctrine that we know. We need to know what Baptists recommend, but what the Baptist faith and message is, because that is faith. Those are like stones out in front of them. There are some things that look like stones, and they're false doctrine, they're false teaching. There are things that are untried. There are things that are not from God, they're from the devil, they're from other people. As we move, we're not just walking on a pathway of walking down a dirt road to heaven like the pilgrim in Pilgrim's Progress. I think it's probably very much like the images that I was sharing with you just there. I want you to create that thought in your mind. Don't be afraid to keep moving. Keep making progress. Keep going in the direction that you know God wants. Don't ever just quit and stop and sit down, because the ice will melt underneath. You've got to keep going. Go get your journey done. Fulfill your mission. Make progress. Make headway. But be careful. And only step on those things that you are certain and sure of, are things where you can make a stand. The things that you can truly, with God's approval, believe in them. There is so much being blasted around you at all times of people telling you what to believe. Not the least of which is that all the polar bears are dying. It doesn't really matter whether you believe that or not, but that's just an example of the thousands of things that are thrown at you all the time